much, Jason, for the invitation to think about cybernetics of 2024, or cybernetics rest in peace, reflecting how we're doing or what should be the goals of cybernetic systems thinking community in 2024 and beyond. Partly this came about as a result of conversation of Jason and I about relevance of cybernetics, and then the relevance of organizations like the International Society for System Sciences and American Society for Cybernetics, among many others. So it gave me an opportunity. So, of course, let's go to the next slide. So just briefly, who am I? I'm Peter Tuddenham. I live in Northern Virginia. And then I was introduced to systems behavior with the Open University in 1979. Then in 1982, when I came to the United States in 1980, I brought my systems ideas along and actually met Bill Reckmeyer at San Jose State, and he worked with me when I worked at Adolf Kohr's company, the beer company, on cybernetics and systems thinking approaches to public relations, corporate communications, public policy for a beer company. 1983, I did some work with Bela Banathy at the Saybrook Institute, now Saybrook University, on systems design. In 1985, I worked with colleagues here in Arlington, Virginia, in an organization called Meta Systems Design Group, which was inspired by the work of Stafford Beer and his work on meta systems. Took some of those ideas to work at the Army War College as a guest faculty on systems leadership development for 3 and 4 stars for the folks up there. It was a couple of years research project funded by the Army Research Institute, and I brought to bear some of my understandings of conversation theory from Pask, stratified systems theory from Elliott Jacks, among other thoughts. 1991, tired of working for other people, so created the College of Exploration, which is a 501c3 not-for-profit here in Virginia, and we've been working essentially on ocean and earth systems education since then. And then in 2014, I renewed my association with the American Society for Cybernetics and the International Society for System Sciences here in Washington. And the rest is sort of history of becoming president of ISSS and being a trustee of ASC. So that's just a quick note on myself with 7 bullets. And I'm following your 7 bullets and 7 slides plan as best I can, Jason, and attempting to do this in a short
You
period
are
of time.
allowed to expand it more.
Oh, really? Oh, well, you'll see 7 bullets, I think, on most of these slides. I was following your 7 principles. So, I was thinking about cybernetics of 2024 for me, essentially. Jason and I have had a number of robust conversations over the years since, I don't know, how long's it been, Jason? A while, 10, 15, maybe 20 years. And he's obviously reinvigorating his Cybernetics 101 course, and of course the Club of Remy is still in existence, and I presume you intend to keep it going. So that's a good 2024. I'm pretty active in something called Metaforum, which is about the work of Stafford Beer, metaforum.org. They have regular webinars. They're doing major. One of their members is doing major work in a global corporation with 170,000 employees, reorganizing it using the VSM model, which is a fairly significant piece of work. And the Metaforum will be having a meeting in Berlin in September to look at creativity and freedom and the work of Stafford in application today. The American Society for Cybernetics, I'll say a bit more about that in a minute, but I participate in monthly executive meetings. They have regular webinars. We know about the Cybernetics Society in the UK. They're pretty active. There's a conference from the World Organization of Systems of Cybernetics in Oxford in September. And then there's the ISSS and ASC meeting here in Washington, D.C., and the systems was cybernetics now complexity in organizations is active in the UK and in many other countries now. I just wanted to give a shout out to the School of Cybernetics at the Australian National University. I think it's the only school that I know or university that has a department, as it were, of cybernetics. I'd be willing, if you know of others, please let me know. Well, I'm not involved in the IEEE. They do have a section called Systems, Man and Cybernetics, which is active still. Okay, I talked about the VSM implementation, and then my own organization, the College of Exploration, we're sponsoring some conversations, meta conversations, if you like, on archives for cybernetics, governance, ocean and earth literacy, and systems and cybernetics literacy. I hope do more of that this year. I also wanted to just note that I'm involved with the strategic dialogic design activities that has come out of John Warfield's work and Aleko Christakis, and we're having a symposium and training in Crete in September if anybody wants to come to that. So that's what I would consider to be at least my focus on cybernetics of 2024 in 7 bullets. So how are we doing? I mean, it's a sort of recap of my view of where we might be. We know about first order cybernetics, of being the sort of the introduction to cybernetics. Had some conversations with a couple of people who feel that that was it, and that's what cybernetics is, which I don't agree with, but it was an interesting sort of assertion of what I might call 1950s and 1960s views of science. And second order cybernetics, and sort of reflecting on what's going on at first order and the role of the observer. And third order, for some people, being perhaps the politics and the social environment within which all this operates, which leads to something I discovered this year, which I think has had several year development in ideas, is this notion of neo-cybernetics, and which is I think, as I understand it, a way of thinking about the complexities of life today in all of its various forms through a lens. And there's a group in Italy in particular, which is a screenshot here in the bottom right of what they are up to. So you could go to neo-cybernetics.org and read about what they're up to. I've touched a little bit in some reading. I haven't got very deep into it on the whole question of quantum cybernetics. The IEEE SMC group have a website and a program that they started many, many years ago on quantum cybernetics and its application to their work in the IEEE. And they have a web, although it doesn't seem to have been updated in the last couple of years. And there's quite a few books on quantum cybernetics. I haven't read any of them yet, but that's sort of an interesting topic, and it covers the field of quantum cybernetics is one that obviously exists, and people in different lenses are taking a look at what the implications are of the relations between quantum mechanics and cybernetic ideas, which I think is quite fascinating, particularly in terms of non-locality and communication and control and feedback at a distance. Which gets into some very interesting areas of psychology, mysticism, spirituality, and other topics, which I find quite fascinating.
Did they, quick question, did they have any contribution towards the current progress of quantum computing?
Not to my knowledge. It's more sort of observational about how, well, the SMC group are looking at quantum computing and how it can help in their engineering work. So that, from I have a quick read of their website, that's about not so much contribution to the design or building of quantum computing, but more on the implications for its operation and how it is can be used, I think, is perhaps the way that they're approaching it without being a member and without being had spent a lot of time. I haven't spent a lot of time digging into it except to observe what they're up to. I'm going to talk a little bit in a minute about the nature of the machine and the collapse of cybernetics, but the optimistic part of that is this idea of a nano bio info cognition cognitive work convergence, which cybernetics could or is helping in bringing deeper understanding of the implications for the convergence of biological nanotechnologies that impact or that carry information and affect our way of being as sort of cogno being thing. And I find that quite fascinating about the whole COVID mRNA so-called vaccine situation as an instance of a nanobioinfo cosmo convergence, straddling society, social media, publicity, drug companies, human suffering. Anyway, that's a whole nother area we could dig into. And then the whole area of generative AI and large language models. And I think there's a lot there that needs to be tackled. Quick plug for the American Society for Cybernetics. I do, as a trustee, I wish to just give them a slide with 7 bullets. They are having their 60th anniversary this year, looking at a 3-year action plan to regenerate more interest. What is the next 60 years for cybernetics? What do we think in 2084 we should be thinking about back? I mean, we're 60 years back, 60 years forward. So there is a conference. Well,
we're
definitely.
all dead.
What?
I mean, we will be all dead. Okay.
I know we'll all be dead, but
Joe will be still there.
yeah, exactly. You see, we're thinking of the young people, that are 20 today. They'll be 80 in 60 years' time, and what would they be saying at a meeting like this if the Club of Remy survives 60 years or American Society for Cybernetics? Cybernetics is a science, a discipline, a meta-discipline, and a practice is a sort of a framework for the conversations around ASC. I just want to put a plug in for place. It's going to be in Washington, D.C., but I think so often we don't think about cybernetics in terms of the place we're in and where we're at. And we've lost sight of our relation or our embeddedness in nature. And I think cybernetics can offer a place for us to understand how we communicate and are controlled by and control our situated position in nature. The conference itself, so it's going to be in Washington, D.C., and there's sort of a lot about place in that conference, which is good. So there's 3 themes there for the conference about action, language in action. The question of archives and archiving, which I'm facilitating some conversations both within ASC and in a sort of meta position. And if you're interested in that, we're having our monthly meeting at 4:00 this afternoon. Let me know. I'll send you the link. And the other thing that's going on is about the role of technology in cities. Whoops, wrong way. Sorry, where am I going? Okay, so I just wanted to say, Jason's idea about rest in peace is exemplified and described quite well in this book, The Nature of the Machine and the Collapse of Cybernetics, that's written by Alcibiades Malapi Nelson, who I just recently have connected to on LinkedIn. So I haven't had any conversations yet, but the book, I haven't finished reading the book, but it's an interesting discourse on cybernetics and the challenges and problems of having conversations across disciplines in a world where academia is very much discipline centric, and cybernetics not easily finding a home or running into challenges of cross boundary conversation. Stated in the book that cybernetics in the US was practically dissolved, says that in page 65. Maybe cybernetics was lost to AI and complexity is another position in the book. But it's focusing pretty much on the machine epistemology, and talks about that in chapter 7. But then, as I said in the previous slide there, this sort of idea of transhumanist technologies as new possibilities for a cybernetic worldview is presented in literally the last few pages of the book. And I sort of skipped to the end to see if, in fact, there was any hope there. So that was sort of interesting, and it's a good discourse on the situation. So 2024 and beyond. I don't think it's RIP. The more I put things together for this short introduction or presentation, I was sort of encouraged, quite frankly. And I just think that everybody should have an understanding of how relationships and communications and control work and affect relationships, whether they're human relationships or they're animal relationships or they're our relationships with buildings, as we all know, being interested in cybernetics, but having clearer articulation of that or those relationships and understanding the roles of feedbacks, I think can be very helpful for a positive society and for a constructive, perhaps, society. An understanding that relations, create communication, control, feedback, and regulation patterns that can be modeled within, at, and between different levels. I think if students had a better understanding of that, they would be able to live healthier lives, I guess, is where I am. I don't think that we are, as on my third bullet here, being aware of how all the regulators that work on us and our lives, the implicit or explicit regulatory processes that constrict or release creativity or how we live a life of freedom, spiritual freedom, emotional, physical, cognitive, intellectual development. I mean, understanding what regulators are influencing our lives, I think, is a positive for cybernetics. I'm increasingly interested in understanding limits and opportunities consisting of scale. I think scale and governance are big issues at the moment. So obviously cybernetics, like the conference in Washington, it can help us understand control and communication as it's expressed in models, which of course are in language, and observed in conversation and experiencing conversation and behavior. It's certainly given me an insight into that. And sort of related to the earlier bullet, I suppose, understanding the way technology is influencing and controlling our lives in implicit ways. And I recently came across this publication called The 21st Century as a Century, Cybernetics for the 21st Century. It's a compilation edited by Yuk Hui. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, who I believe is in the Netherlands. And on page 15, he or she opens with the quote that the 21st century is a century of cybernetics. So looking forward, I think that's I found it a very positive collection of writings on, as they say, epistemological reconstruction. So some goals, and these are just some ideas that I pulled together one of the things that's on the top of my mind at the moment, with many grandchildren all with their noses in social media and the rising concern, certainly in the United States and the United Kingdom, about increases in populism and division and increases in child anxiety and suicidal thoughts and behaviors and even actual suicides, not to mention drug addiction of fentanyl and other drugs. I think that cybernetics could help us have better insight into the impact on culture of, things like social media, cell phones, large language models, and so on and so forth. I'm personally interested in developing systems and cybernetics literacy and connecting it to ocean and earth literacy. The systems and cybernetics literacy has been an ongoing piece of work since 2008. Ocean and earth literacy has been things I've been involved in since 2000, if not before, which has gone global, which is a whole interesting topic. The whole question of what do we do with archives? How do we make them relevant now, and how do we use them? As I said, guidance on design and operation of governance at different scales. More understanding of how cybernetics contributes to our freedoms and our creativity is another possible understanding. The whole issue of ethics. I worked with Mick Ashby before he passed away on the work of his grandfather. Mick was very concerned about ethics and did a lot of work interpreting his grandfather's work in terms of ethics of systems. And I think this whole question of which we're coming to have more understanding of is our connection to the universe and each other through high levels of consciousness and spiritual development and what we hold in common in life. So that, and I think cybernetics could have help to give us some deeper understanding of the systemic nature of life and love and the spiritual world. So that's my 20 minutes and my 7x7. Jason, thank you very much for the opportunity to give some thought to this. Hope this helps.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah. So, I mean, whenever I open mine and go into mine, you'll see that mine's on the spiritual domain, more so than it is on some of the other parts. So I just wanted to ask, when you say that you think it allows for a deeper understanding of consciousness and universal love, from the new sphere, do you think you could unpack, sorry, I was reading as I was saying it. Do you think you could unpack what you think would be the proper direction for that?
Proper direction. Oh gosh. I mean, there's multiple directions, but I think beginning to understand more about how intention affects behavior, how there's a certain sense of knowing about family connections. I mean, I would swear I knew. I was in Washington, D.C. at actually a carol service, and my mother was in England, and I swear I knew the moment she died. Which was a communication, right? And that controlled my behavior after that. I'm pretty close with my sister in England, and she and I often know when we're going to call each other. It's kind of an ironic sort of situation. So I'm a member of the American Society for Dowsers, and dowsing has a long history of understanding the connections between earth energies and knowing where water flows. Many people will tell you that water holds consciousness. Water is a spiritual medium or a sacred medium. We've lost our relationship and the sacredness to water. That's a whole nother area of possible. Anyway, that I could go on about. I mean, I don't know if that helps. I don't know our proper direction. I don't think there's a proper direction. I think just understanding the role of communication and control mechanisms or control systems in our lives helps us lead better lives, basically, I guess.
Bernd?
Yes, I want to underline your last sentence, can help us to lead better lives. And I think asking what can systems and cybernetics help us to better understand is in a way the wrong question. Because in my view, I'm convinced since my student days that systems and cybernetics can be applied really anywhere. And wherever we apply it, we can better understand things. And in that sense, I also don't see any current or future disappearance of systems and cybernetics. But I see two big problems for the institutionalization. I have been over many years been active in the international sociological associations in the field of what we call socio-cybernetics. And this association, like the whole educational sector, is very nicely organized along different sub-disciplines, sub-fields, sociology of the family, of politics, of economy, of this and that, and many more things. And we as socio-cybernetics, we simply don't fit in, because socio-cybernetics, but even more systems and cybernetics, are a kind, in my view, of meta-science similar to mathematics.
Sure.
If you talk about mathematics itself, it's a highly abstract field, and nobody except the mathematicians need to be interested in it. But mathematics can be applied everywhere. And that's the same, I think, which creates for the institutionalization of systems and cybernetics, but also for our subfield of socio-cybernetics, a problem of institutionalization. Because also in the International Sociological Association, we are just organizationally one subgroup, but our topics using systems and cybernetics go into all the other subgroups. And that is, I think, also a big problem for institutionalizing such a field at universities as a separate discipline, as a separate field. And since I have been working, everybody keeps talking about the interdisciplinary communication, interdisciplinary projects, and. But as you mentioned, it is extremely difficult in practice to maintain interdisciplinary communication among the different scientific disciplines. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. I'd like to follow up on what Bernd was just saying, and just in terms of cognitive flexibility, I think that that's maybe the key. And how do we learn how to communicate in ways that hold that tension of our individual experience of an identity and a mind in this field of greater consciousness. Peter, I'm glad to get to know you more and more. We are in so many similar meetings because of your kind invitations, and yours too, Jason. So I'm grateful for the discussion, and
we are in the process of forming a real group, so to speak.
what kind of group?
A real group, not an imaginative group.
Oh.
I will make some suggestions during my talk. Maybe it's now the turn for Joe.
Yeah, if
You
Joe can.
prefer to be called the echomancer. You may explain to us a little bit.
Please take over the screen. Yeah. I can't for some reason see how to stop my share, which is very unusual for me.
If Joe just go ahead to share, there is a choice to click to switch.
Trying to give me remote control. I think at the bottom of it, on the share screen, you should be able to click that. In the actual Zoom.